Yeah, welcome to the SHARC group, the session on recognizing shared contributions for resilient research, and advancing rewards in credit and open science. We have a collaborative session notes doc that we could probably copy and paste again into the chat. But I'm Chris Erdman. I'm joined by co-chairs Federica and Francis Crawley. We might have some other co-chairs join us, but I think of myself as like a shepherd co-chair. So I was part of the previous co-chair group, and we've now invited Francis and Federica. And actually, if any of you, we could still be open to growing. Depends on how our session goes today and how interested you are. But why not join the cause? I'll start by just starting with the six guiding principles at the heart of RDA. So openness, consensus, harmonization, community driven, nonprofit, and technology neutral, and inclusivity. And I'll add one more for the rest of the session too, is that we also sort of invite a welcoming space here. Um, so yeah, and I think that's always the case in RDA. Um, we have this nice outline here to share with you. So some background of Shark, if you're maybe less familiar with it, the work that's been done so far, and then we'll move into sort of ongoing work. We want to introduce a charter that we've sort of revised and the new work that we're sort of looking at and need your help and sort of seeing if this is the right direction. And then we'll walk through some examples, to sort of inspire you and see if there's anything that we can build on from these examples and what course we're taking. So yeah, so I wasn't here at the beginning of Shark. I kind of landed in the middle of it all. So some of this earlier work is I just wanted to list, and give credit to, they the previous groups did a lot of work on sort of fair assessment tools, self-assessment, and then you can see sort of the work that they did here, applying the FAIR principles and sort of walking through, the Achilles. I like the title of it, the Achilles heel, and then looking at sort of templates of fairness and evaluation criteria. So this is sort of the pre-work, and then when I landed in the middle of this, we decided to send out a survey to the community about what everyone was doing around OS activities, and try to sort of get an understanding of where was everyone was at with sort of what they were doing as far as policies and what they were where they were at and their thinking with open science. And what this led to was production of these recommendations that were published in the CoData Data Science Journal, but they're also available as RDA recommendations. So they were approved as an output. And then we have the work of the survey, sort of the analysis and in a PLOS paper as well. So that's the second paper that you see down below here. Um, but I sort of wanted to summarize. We summarized it in an ISC blog post recently, just about what we were doing. So just finding that that open science is not it's supported in principle, but not sufficiently embedded in research evaluation and reward systems. That sort of traditional metrics still linger. They dominate, and we really need to start working towards including them into promotion and funding decisions. we're still kind of in that space, right? Like, I mean, we just published this, but this work goes back, about 2 years or so. Um, and then, activities like fair data sharing, open access publishing, like open peer review, software sharing are valued, but rarely incentivized. And then, we were sort of putting out a call for systematic reform, and alignment around some of these incentives, and valuing open science, within funders and institutions and publishers. So it just really embedding open science into evaluation frameworks. And so, that requires policy change, practical guidance, tangible institutional rewards to shift research culture. So this is our draft charter. We could probably share, and I think in the collaborative notes, the link to the slides is there, but I'll pass it over to Francis, who's gonna walk through the revised charter here.
Good. Thank you, Chris. I think I have a few slides going throughout, but this is, I think, the only slide on the charter, so try to keep it short. Yeah, so Federica and I are joining since the end of last year, really. We looked at the work that was already done, rather remarkable. I actually think SHARC has done, well, SHARC is probably the first group I know of, anyway, that really tackled the question of research assessment. Probably wasn't using the term research assessment at that time, but really did try to understand credits and rewards for the work that people do in science and in higher education. And I think that what the work they've done is not only foundational, but I think it's still in many ways rather unique. The work that SHARC did was really done in a very clear, well-defined space, and it also produced very strong outcomes that are useful going forward. So I think what Chris, Federica, and I have been discussing over the past few months now is how can we move forward based on the work that's already been done, but bring that forward. And one of the things we thought about was to move from recommendations more or less to practical interoperable reward mechanisms and machine actionable credit systems. So this is one of the ideas. It's just one of the ideas here that we would like to bring as we develop the group going forward. And then also to think more perhaps about metadata and how we can use metadata, for example, persistent identifiers or contribution roles or recognition types or something, in order to use those as signals to link into, let's say, digital systems that would help us to better understand or better, let's say, be more inclusive of the rewards and recognitions that SHARC already laid out in the recommendations. We wanted to have, let's say, a focus on the empirical validation of the work that we do. So we will look at pilot studies, we will look at case studies, and we will also try to look at the impact, the behavioral impact on researchers, on institutions, and those institutions being both research performing institutions, RPOs, and funding organizations, RFOs, research funding organizations, as we use the terms here in Europe. So I think those are the two categories that we want to look at, and we want to try to follow that up. And to follow that up within COARA AWIP, we've kind of started already a global observatory. And within SHARC, we'd like to expand that observatory to also include the specific outputs from the SHARC recommendations in the framework of the benchmarks for institutions, national and disciplinary reward practices, specifically within SHARC, and bring that in here too. We're also discussing this with the International Science Council to bring them into the global observatory. And we're also discussing it with people like Dora and but also other places in the world outside of just the European framework here. And then we want to also position, finally here, SHARC as really the focal point for the credit side of open science. Whereas other groups, and we'll talk about that later perhaps, but other groups are perhaps more interested in ethics or governance or policy. We want to have to maintain what was already produced within the recommendations with a focus on credits and rewards. Thank you, Chris and Federica. I give it back to you.
Thank you, Francis. So I'm going to bring a bit of perspective about what we are doing inside some EU-funded initiatives regarding crediting recognition of research artifacts beyond publication. So this is mainly going to touch the work that we are doing, for example, in EOS Keyverse, Elixir Steers, Elixir Data Platform, where we are aligning our efforts in order to promote also a research assessment reform that takes into account not only publications, but also all the research artifacts that lead to publications. So, meaning essential contributions like software, training, data that most often remain undervalued. So we know that modern research depends on a wide range of outputs, so assessment systems need to reflect that reality. And there is already a lot of strong alignment with international initiatives such as COARA, DORA, Barcelona Declaration, all pushing toward inclusive and responsible evaluation. So the goal, what we are trying to do with these initiatives now, these EU-funded projects, is to move toward a system where research activities can receive credit, be recognized, and more visible. So this shift is key also to building a more transparent and sustainable research ecosystem. Next slide, Chris. Thank you so much. So this is indeed the work that we are doing in Steers, Elixir Steers, where we focus on giving formal credit to a full range of research contributions across life sciences. There we also published a policy brief that is linked in the slide, as well as a community effort on building. It's a preprint building on the work that we have done for the policy brief, and we are developing a framework where we propose, where we build on existing infrastructures. For us, it's Epicuron and BIP Scholar, two platforms that are designed to credit a variety of research artifacts and also have researcher profiles where the researchers can show their efforts across a variety of activities. So, which are the pillars of this framework? So, it's mainly around 5 key elements: developing a framework to capture diverse contributions, increasing visibility and rewards through better metadata profiles, aligning with European policies like EOSC and COARA, and integrating open science tools such as ORCID and knowledge graphs. So in the end, supporting a more inclusive and transparent research assessment to create a pathway that can systematically recognize contribution across research life sciences. And then we are basically working on the same direction in Everse. Next slide, Chris. Thank you. In Everse, so EOS Keyverse as a a bit of a different focus from STEERS in the sense that it's not only limited to life sciences, it's across several disciplines, but it's more focused on software and research software and training. And where we treat software as a first-class research output and a key component of scientific knowledge. So we want to address the gaps in recognition of efforts that research software engineers, trainers do inside their daily work activities. And to this end, we are also focusing on career paths for digital professionals. So, which is next slide, Chris. Thank you. So this is a critical part of the discussion because it means that we want to recognize the people that are behind these contributions, not only the activities, the efforts, the work that they produce, but also the people. So roles as research software engineers, data stewards, training professionals are essential for modern research, but they're often not supported by clear career paths. So to ensure sustainability, we want to promote a change in institutions that need to define dedicated roles, develop clear career trajectories, and also integrate these roles into evaluation frameworks. One example of this that show that this is feasible is a University College of London research software engineers framework. So recognizing these professionals is essential for us to maintain the infrastructure that research depends on. And finally, of course, we are trying to align these initiatives across the European recognition ecosystem, is the last slide, Chris, thank you. So trying to achieve coordination across multiple stakeholders, including policy makers, define priorities and framework, but also, as Francis mentioned before, it's relevant to reach to RPOs and RFOs. And also what is probably one of the most important parts of the framework that we are working on is getting the communities involved, the people that are doing the real work. So researchers, trainers, research software engineers, curators, for example, to get involved, to test the infrastructure and refine the approach in practice. So test it with real world use cases. So we are leveraging existing resources. We want to promote a change and try to get people, of course, to use and get involved in our recognition framework to test in practice what we are doing and see how it works and how it can help promote their career paths and also the work that we are doing. So this is just an overview of what we are doing inside the EU-funded initiatives. And yeah, basically this. Thank you.
This is Francis.
Francis.
Yes, this is a bit of a tag team here. Thank you for this, Chris. Yeah, so I just thought I'm involved in these 4 different groups, so I just wanted to more or less the way Federica has done it. There's a lot of groups, we'll see this later on too, there's a lot of people now involved in research assessment. So since SHARC kind of started this thing as far as I can see, it has become really, really large. And I just wanted to show that there's a need maybe now to start to think about how we can align different initiatives going forward here. And I think, and this is what Chris set us off on a good path with, there seems to be a common agreement or some kind of agreement that things are not quite right in science and education, particularly with regard to how we value different outputs. So I've put this here as a kind of systemic challenge in science and education regarding a misalignment between research systems reward and what responsible, open, and data-intensive science and higher education requires. I think, and I would make an argument for it, there is a crisis of science, and there is as much a crisis of higher education as well. This is a really serious problematic that we will be confronted with in our societies. How will we teach students for the future? I don't know. I don't know if the universities have a real future in this society, to be honest. The universities are not here forever. They only came up in the 13th, 14th century, and they came up for a very specific purpose. They managed to take over the whole world. So everybody works on the university system now. But the universities, we have to ask ourselves, and our scientific institutions, are they fit for purpose? This is a question that is being asked really directly by the European Commission, by the European Parliament, even by the European Council. And this is being asked also within institutions as well. Our institutions have evolved dramatically. And if we just see, for example, the change in European higher education between, let's say, the 1980s and today, it's radical. It's completely different than what it was, but it's also a system that has become, I would say, basically it has copied the US system. That is what they've done with the Barcelona Convention, and I think it's hollowed out this. But the problem is, it's also aligned itself with industry. It's become a much more complex thing. So at the heart of this, though, is research assessment. Because how you reward people, how you give credit to people for the work that they do, determines the work that they will do. It determines their objectives. It determines thus what science will be done, and it determines how higher education will be structured and functioning. This is no small thing here. And I think what SHARC gives us is a credit and reward for data sharing, software, and open science. In Coara ARIP, we have tried to focus on the AI and data-driven science. And I think that we were the first to do that in this space here, but also to bring into it ethics and research integrity. And that is also something unique here as well. And then with the SC4RA, the self-evaluation for research assessment, which is a Coara Boost project, but also a UNESCO and UN project as well. Now, we look at self-assessment, institutional self-assessment, and the implementation of responsible research assessment. And then we also have a very strong and a very good International Science Council Forum Steering Group on scientific publications and research evaluation, which gives us a global reform of publishing and research assessment systems. Next slide. So in order to try to align this work, I think there are some shared conceptual core values, if you want. One is we want to move beyond publication-centric evaluation. And when we say publication-centric, it is not just, we want to say that it's not only publications that count as contributions to science or contribution to higher education. More things count. And of course, SHARC has been the first to kind of identify that. To recognize diversity across research outputs, and there's a number of working groups within RDA that are doing this very well, as well as some of the groups that Federica just mentioned as well. And also to embed responsibility, transparency, and fairness within the evaluation systems themselves. SHARC identifies the problem and defines what should be rewarded. In Coara ARIP, we try to define how it should be rewarded in an ethical and responsible manner, and using machines as well to assist that. And in SE for RIA, we look at how institutions, because it's really focused on the RPOs, the research performing organizations, how those institutions can implement these reforms into practice. And this is more or less a case study example where we do this at Tobe University in Turkey and at the Catholic University of Portugal in Lisbon. And then with the ISC Forum Steering Group, we're trying to promote the adoption of globally and aligned stakeholders with a common understanding of what needs to be done. Next slide, please. And this is last slide then for my session here. So the questions arise really, what we try to do is create a kind of global architecture where we can go from recognition of contributions to global reform of research assessment. So moving from SHARC to Quara ARIP to SE4RA and to the ISC Forum Steering Group. Thank you, Chris and Federica. Back to the main speakers.
No, thanks. I guess I wanted to sort of take an approach of the practical aspect of like how I've seen researchers respond to when why they should do this, why should they incorporate open science and then one of the motivational aspects is that they see that funders are doing this now, right? And so one of the things I wanted to show initially was this matrix that I often show, and actually it jolts researchers because they see all these funders that they recognize, and they see that they're all sort of starting to align around particular things, and I've had researchers come up to me and say, I didn't know, this was happening so fast. And so like I think that matrix that I show is sometimes like very valuable, and it leads me to sort of that this wider conversation that we're having about like how can we sort of develop something that can be useful worldwide, like that can be something that's shared, because we have all these groups working on different things, but like how can we have something that we share into like this, where funders can share what they're doing in a more sort of machine readable way, like like what Francis was saying, and really like what Federico was saying. um, right now they share these things in PDFs, or like this information's on websites, and but yeah, this the matrix is based on work that done at Aligning Science Across Parkinson's. If you're not aware, they do, they obviously support Parkinson's research. It's supported by Sergey Brin. So they have a lot of funding behind them, and they also work in collaboration with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, which I also worked with, which I worked with back in the day. And Michael J. Fox Foundation just updated its open science policy, but Aligning Science Across Parkinson's was almost like showing the way initially, like of doing some of these advanced things, of credit, asking for contributions in form of software protocols, in a collaborative way too, right? And they build a community where these resources are available in a collaborative sense. Um, so those examples are good ones. Um, I take what I've learned from there and think about, how did we try to apply these things, the same things, open science guidance in a life science infrastructure across Sweden. So through SciLife Lab. SciLife Lab is a platform for supporting researchers in Sweden. I just was recently the head of open science there, and I moved to an advisory role with them. But one of the things I thought might be good to show is, you know, what I was aiming for was trying to get to an open science guidance that was clear and direct to researchers of like what are we expecting of them, right? Because a lot of the time it's very generic, and they can't grab onto exactly what do they need to do. Because in many ways we have the time to follow this space, but they don't. And so they often need something that's very very easy and digestible, for them to sort of do the things that we're hoping them to do. So we didn't the OS guidance was actually a product of multiple people. We had feedback from a lot of people at SciLife Lab, but as I was leaving, it still wasn't put forward. But the plan was to have it align with the policy that we had and have it as a useful, document. But that guidance is another thing of wondering, like, can we systematize what we're doing, so that we can actually have something that's more in common like that, that is something that others can sort of tap into. And the last thing that I wanted to bring up is monitoring aspect. So one of the other things that researchers, I think, are saying more and more is like, why should I do this? Because it's clear that it's not being recognized, it's not being seen. Um, like they just not seeing the visible evidence of, of funders or agencies tracking, the work that they're doing, this collaborative work, and the different elements that we're talking about here. So one of the hard aspects is trying to put up a monitor, and at SciLife Lab we used, open air. That's just one example, but to sort of also say that this space is really, really difficult. Like the monitoring space is still very new, and like you still have to work to get all this data to come together, right? And so OpenAir has, done a good job of this, but we still have a lot of gaps, right? Like DataCite was mentioned as an example. We still are not seeing all the data citations come through, and that there's being seen sort of in those dashboards like DataCite Commons. And so, like, these are sort of some of the things that hopefully we can sort of work together on and advance. So I pass this on to Francis now. So that was my example. So Francis, if you wanted to take look at or sort of explain the tasks,
Oh,
or do you
Chris,
want me to do this? I'll do it.
you do it better than me, I think. Please, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So yeah, like these are some of the tasks that we were thinking about, right, for Shark moving forward. So this credit signal metadata schema that sort of captures that, and prototyping. And we have an example of that, just to get the oh, my links are not working. I'm sorry, Allison. All right, we'll fix that. I'm sorry, Allison. Um, so then the second thing that we were thinking about is this global observatory of open science rewards. And we actually updated this. So this is old. The UNESCO Open Science Dashboard is to, the launch is coming later. So it's unfortunately we can't show, what that looks like yet. But we have another example to share there. And then the EOSC Open Science Observatory. And then the global survey of reward systems, we thought maybe a follow-up survey would be also, a possible idea. And so we have an example to share there. So to start, I think this was wait, let me go back. Um, the Arab example, maybe you wanted to demo this. You wanted to share it in your browser, Francis. So the Arab example, the digital tool.
Yeah, I was going to show it, but it's not pretty, so I didn't include it. It
Well,
might
you
take
can
too much time. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you wanted to share it in your browser, or do you want us to come back to it or?
Um, I'll try to put a link into the chat. I think that's easiest, and then
Oh,
people can have it that way.
okay. But I think I can pull it up and share it, and then you can maybe walk through it a little bit.
I'll do that. That's thank you, Chris. Yeah.
Okay. So did you share it or? I don't.
No, I don't have it open even. So let me
Oh, I
see.
can come. We can come back. So here, I'll go back to. So as you try and find that, and I'll just move to this example. Would be great to share the UNESCO Open Science Dashboard, but another example is the EOSC Observatory. So Open Air works with EOS to gather survey data from all these countries and organizations. Um, and they presented in this dashboard, annual dashboard, which you can sort of walk through and see how different countries are doing as far as different aspects of open science. So that's one example. Let me stop sharing, and I can come back maybe to Francis again here.
Chris, I can't find it. I'm sorry. I won't find it right now. I won't
Uh,
find it.
okay, so
Apologize. Because I
and
can't. Yeah, my mind isn't working. It's a little bit late for me.
And my little one has joined us, so that was bound to happen in this call. So I might have to pass off to one of you, but I can at least follow up with this. We have this survey. We also are sharing the survey of the previous survey that we did as an example of something we can build on so that's something we can sort of come back to and say. For instance, I know one of the things that Federica was interested in was what when she joined the group, and also Francis was looking at all these other outputs that we could get credit for, and so I think it's time for me to pass this off to Francis, and I will go off screen now. So here, I'll share the slide deck with you if you don't have it, or do you have it on hand?
I have it here. Let me just make sure I'm okay with it. Please, Federica. And is this okay? Is this where we were?
Yeah, and then
Yes.
the slide after, yeah.
Okay, okay, good. So, Chris, is it okay if we go to the next slide? Because I think this is yours here.
Yeah, you're the next slide, and I'm gonna go on mute now because I have to
Okay,
talk to my little one.
you have larger responsibilities. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Yeah. So, I'll try to be quickly here too. I just wanted to give a sense. We have SHARC at the top of the list. I really do believe SHARC started this whole thing. Allison, thank you. But really kicked us off on this here, together with Anne and some other really fantastic people. And they did a lot of work for a number of years. And then it sat a bit dormant, and now we try to revise it a bit. But you can see, and it's not just this, you also heard from Federica, and you also saw in the chat from Francoise, there's so many people now working on research assessment in different areas. And what we need to do within SHARC is firstly to find our own specific place within that discussion. And I think that specific place, as I've already said, was really well outlined in the very beginning, from the beginning of the work they did, with regard to credits and rewards. So I think Federica and Chris, I think we need to keep that focus, and also with the people here as well, too. So there's a number of RDA groups that are working on this here. The first here, of course, is SHARC. The second one that worked on it and that really led to a lot of other initiatives here was the EOS Future and RDA, Artificial Intelligence and Data Visitation Working Group, which we did together with, well, quite a few people here. But I think Niels played a very important role here too, because we ran into the problem again with AI and data visitation, specifically really with AI, about how to award people for the work that they've been doing. And also we did a lot of work in an ethics context with that there too. Then there's also now the teaming for self-evaluation and research assessment across scales, from researchers to institutions, which is coordinated. It's a COARA research project, actually. It's a boost-funded project, coordinated through RDA and working primarily with the Tobe University in Ankara and the Catholic University of Portugal, UCP, in Lisbon. And this is really focused on implementing, let's say, some of the work that came from Workstream 2 in COARA ARIP into institutions. This was the what the COARA steering committee wanted us to do here too. This also now has become the very first UN recognized project in research evaluation ever, really. So it's a UNESCO endorsed project under the United Nations International Decade of the Sciences for Sustainable Development, which is a program that runs between 2024 and 2033. So it's a 10-year program here too. We also have the Evaluation of Research Interest Group that was formed not so long ago in RDA. And we have a very important group as well, the working group on the infrastructure for non-traditional research outputs and processes, that interest group too, because that interest group is really important because it also brings to us, and I think what SHARC also intended to do in the beginning too, was to point out those areas that were not there already. And then we can look across RDA and we will find a number of other groups that are very much aligned with this kind of work and research assessment that we're doing here as well. So to wrap up a bit in a way, if we look for the RDA community, what are, let's say, the key needs and challenges and opportunities that we have here? The key needs, as I see them, is a recognition of diverse contributions. I think we're aware of that. We need to have interoperable, but not just interoperable. We have to have linking systems for credit that are based on persistent identifiers that take into account not only outputs, but also the roles that people play, the work that they do. Because not every, for example, if you're a data curator, you're not necessarily having a specific output that you can point to, but you're doing an important job along the way. And that can be just as valuable as the one collecting the data or the one analyzing the data. And then also we need practical tools for institutions that help us to implement the guidances that we have. And one thing I want to point out too, we did a survey in COARA ARIP in the beginning. You can find about 100 European Commission funded projects that are related to this. All these projects receive somewhere between, let's say, 2 and 6 or 8 million euros, mostly between 4 and 6 million euros. And they all produce PDFs. They're all policy guidance, guidelines, models for doing training courses and so forth, but very few, if any, are implemented. And, you know, I think this is a remarkable thing about RDA. Nobody is paid here, nobody is receiving funding necessarily for what they're doing, but a great deal of implementation is going on. I mean, for SC4RA, we receive 40,000 euros. For Koara ARIP, which is much bigger than many of the projects done, we received 5,000 euros. So we can do a lot with a little bit of money. And we should do that way too. That's responsible, being responsible here. So we need to align with these different organizations, these different groups that are going on, that doing this here within RDA, but also outside RDA. And we need evidence-based approaches. And I think that's what we want to insist on here within SHARC as well. So some core challenges we have. There is a persistent dominance of publication-centric evaluation systems. And I could give you examples, but I won't name names. But I know people who have outright rejected the participation of the publication industry in working groups, and then the same people publish their main documents in a paid-per-view industry publication. So this still dominates. And even in institutions, or even in this, among people who discuss, okay, we want open science and so forth, we'll still find pay-per-view, we'll still find this going on. My view is we need to not exclude, we need to include in this discussion. We need to understand that there is an industry that already exists that's real, and that people have jobs and people have futures that they're concerned about. So this is real. But we have to then tackle it in a real way as well, I think. We need incentives for open science practices, and we need real incentives. And by the way, if you go to Latin America, Niels will tell you, if you go to Africa and you say to people, we want you to publish in open science, they will say to you, literally to your face, you're crazy. And they will have the impression you're trying to steal from them. So this idea of sovereignty and open science has to be reconciled somehow. Both are legitimate, both have their place, but it's not one or the other. It's a recognition of the appropriateness of each kind of, let's say, access to science. And then there's a fragmentation across disciplines, institutions, and regions, and I think RDA tackles this in a very good way. We have, and unless we address this problem, we will never get out of it. If we don't have machine actionable credit signals and metadata standards, which is what we're looking for now in SHARC, if we don't have that, then all we're going to be doing is spinning our wheels, because we can complain as much as we want about a public-centric evaluation systems or about ranking systems or whatever we want. But if we don't provide an alternative, we're just complaining. That's all we're doing. And then we have to find ways, and I think this is something we can do, of integrating non-traditional outputs into career progressions. So what are some of the opportunities for SHARC and its partners? To develop and pilot credit signal metadata systems or schemas, build a global observatory that we've already started in Koara ARIP, focusing here in SHARC on open science rewards, launch a global survey of rewards systems, maybe a version 2. Federico, we have to discuss this with Chris and with the rest of the group. Do we want to do another survey? Surveys are difficult things to do. And strengthen alignment with other groups, could be whomever here, but But they have to be open groups. They have to be inclusive groups. They have to be groups that follow, for example, the RDA way of doing things. And they can't just be a handful of people that come once a year and then say, here's the product and here's our authorship. And we also need to foster cross-stakeholder collaboration across funders, institutions, publishers, and infrastructures. Here are some upcoming events that we'll have. We'll do a conference with RDA here on self-assessment for institutional change on the 15th of April. Not a conference, but a webinar that will be. And I put in the chat where you can register for it. We'll do a conference. We'll try to do a conference. We're trying to put it together for the 16th of June at the Royal Academies in Brussels, with hopefully with the European Commission. We have already a Koara Andorra satellite event, but also part of the Force 2026 Force 11 meeting in Singapore in the beginning of June there. And then we will do a workshop in Jakarta for a national workshop with Indonesia. And keep in mind, Indonesia is 280 million people, so it's not a small place to be. And probably we'll try to do something in Malaysia as well at the same time. And then we discussed on Tuesday this week at the session for SE4RA that SE4RA would organize a kind of cross RDA groups coordination discussion probably in June as well here. So Federica and Chris, this takes us to the end of our slides. Thank goodness for everyone here. And some questions that we might want to look at. What reward mechanisms work in your context? What barriers prevent recognition of open science contributions? What tools or standards are most urgently needed? And most importantly, help us to understand what SHARC should be doing and how we should be going forward in this whole discussion here. So on behalf of Federica and Chris, and also on behalf of Chris's daughter, we thank you for your participation and your patience with us. And hopefully we can have some discussion with those who are strong enough to stay with us throughout this discussion here.
Don't encourage my daughter, by the way. She smiled.
She is a major contributor, please. Yeah. Allison, let me ask you, you were at the beginning of this journey of SHARC. How are we doing? What are we doing well? What do we need to do better, or what do we need to improve?
Well, you also have Laurence Mabille here, who was the instigator, really, of the whole thing. But before she gets online, one of the things I'm very pleased about and where I came from was this business of reality. I was really very fed up, as you have correctly discerned as a general thing, but I personally was very annoyed, having been a research director at a university, at a lot of big talk and very few tools and action and uptake and flow through for empowering researchers and also allowing communities and society to benefit most by people being encouraged to do great things. Okay, by being rewarded for some of the excellent stuff they do. So I do love your return back to the credits and rewards being central. If I may wax a little bit, I was fascinated though with this disjunct in the talk from all of you, which I suppose has a bit of a reliance on institutions because they are extant. And Francis, you made the comment that, of course, universities are new institutions, relatively speaking. I mean, academics were independently employed until the 19th century, really. So, the structure is fairly recent, and it's not, we should not anticipate it's lost. And I was wondering if a transition to thinking about societal benefits, just thinking about that into the future might be quite an interesting way to go, that higher education has certain strangleholds on the way things are done. Publishers have certain strangleholds. We mustn't undermine them and have whole piles of people unemployed because they're doing good things. But on the other hand, maybe we could think about, as you said, RDA does, cutting across some of these boundaries that we have created for ourselves to make sure we make the most of our clever people, our inventions, etc. So there you go. That was a bit more than what I think SHARC was about. But yeah, I joined SHARC because got to know Laurence, but I joined SHARC because I was particularly interested in empowerment by everybody.
Well,
Empowerment of the people, empowerment of the researchers, etc. Evidence-based too. Sorry, Francis, I've shut up.
no, Alison, I'm really happy you said it. Um, two things come to mind for me right away on it. We had another session, I think yesterday, if I remember, or 2 days ago, since now, whatever, with the AIDV working group. And it was no intention there to speak about research evaluation, none at all. But it came up, and it came up particularly when we started to talk about citizen science and community science. And then also in the context of AI, because AI is not just a scientific thing, it's a societal thing, even more so than data, if you want. It impregnates, it inhabits, if you want, every aspect, every cell, every molecule, every mineral in the world, it seems. It's so omnipresent. And so it's not just a scientific instrument, a scientific tool, or even a scientific method. It is omniscient. And this is a real concern here too. And then the other thing is, just before this meeting today, I had a meeting with a group of, UNESCO is writing a science report for 2026. It's the eighth one they do. They do it every 2 years. This is after 4 years or something now. And we're responsible for writing I'm the lead author on the chapter on AI. And so it's a science report, but in our group, which are AI experts, we are saying it's not just science, it's all of society. And I think too, this idea of somehow, because when we talk about research evaluation, we're actually talking about the value of research. That's what we're really talking about. And the value of research is not just for institutions, as you rightly point back at me, if you want. It's really for society. And this is also why the funders are important, because the funders are also ones who determine what research we do. We can't fool ourselves if we think, well, we have academic freedom, that's good, but we'll do what we get paid to do normally. And that determines, and what the funders do really is determine what kind of science they want for what kind of impact they want in society. So I think your discussion here on the role of society is really important. I said too much, yeah.
But you put in I suppose, how many little points have we got here? You've got existing institutions, government, universities. But you've got a big player that is not ruled by either of those things, which is the funders, and some government, if it is representative, we have society feeding through to there, but it's usually the loudest voice. Anyway, yeah, I've got a few pivot points that are pulling and creating a structure. And yeah, anyway, I'm thinking.
We have in Europe today, at this moment, right, probably right now, just down the street from me, 20 kilometers from me, we have a war going on between the universities and the European Commission and the Parliament and the Council, the whole of the European government, about how they're going to fund science. It's a war because we're now going into a New Horizon program. And it's a war between the Commission and the Parliament, but also between the university organizations and the groups there. It's a societal issue. Yeah.
Well, so I'll bring us back, maybe a bit back down to earth here, and come back to our to trying to shape, the direction of Shark, right? And what we think might be valuable, moving forward. But like also like what we can attract people, to contribute to, because I think we need more involvement, right, from others at RDA and outside of RDA. So like one particular group that was asking was like we'd be interested to hear what comes of this meeting at ISE, right? And I think the trigger words for them were Open Science Observatory, right? I don't know, like that might have been one of them. Survey was definitely not one of them, probably. I don't think that excites anyone. Uh, but I think probably, like this observatory idea and potentially the schema that this sort of framework, if you could call it that, even back up further of like, how 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 can we actually include, credit in these systems, right? Um, is potentially um another approach. And I think Federica had some thoughts on that first one, but I don't know to put you on the spot, but if you wanted to.
No. Thank you, Chris. Well, you know what, I have my perspective of you-funded projects mostly, but um, what we are trying to do is what I think is really relevant now is I'm sorry, I was looking at a comment in the chat. Um, you want to talk, Nusa?
Yes.
Yeah, but Federico,
Okay.
you go ahead. You don't worry.
Oh, I didn't
Okay.
know. I'm
Okay.
So
sorry.
sorry, I didn't.
I didn't know you had your hand up. I'm
I didn't
sorry.
see it. Sorry.
May I talk?
So,
No, after you.
okay, as you wish.
Mhm.
Okay. So, mostly, I believe that what can drive a shift now is that we have to move forward from a primary academic performance assessment in modern academia that is still much publication metric related and fill a gap that exists in the recognition reward system for all the outputs that lead to to publications actually, so the real work that gets done, and also a need for wider consideration of career paths that lead that people actually can follow. But what is mostly relevant, I think, at least from my perspective, is that we aim to foster a productive, sustainable open science ecosystem where these outputs are made visible and considered. So we are examining also technical solutions for credit and sociological barriers, as we know that the sociological barrier has a lot of influence in the end in how researchers perceive the work that they are doing. If it's not visible, it's not done. So even if there is a lot of effort, if you cannot prove it, basically doesn't exist, and all their efforts are wasted. So yeah, it's mostly around this what I'm trying to focus at the moment, and basically lead find which are the gaps, see the whole landscape, and see which are the gaps that should be addressed in order to drive a reform in research assessment. It's clearly something that it's not immediate, but of course, I do believe that there are already tools that are strongly connected with persistent identifiers because in the end, we should avoid duplication of efforts. We should reuse and make possible to, once the outputs, once the activities, the research is credited, it should be possible to be reused across systems without creating something new, so that this is something that also researchers can use and show in their CVs, and it gets to be visible in the end and can be shown in research assessment. So yes, also one of the efforts inside the STIERS EVARS, for example, is to leverage platforms that are already relying on persistent identifiers, so that nothing is, so that all of these activities are also related to ORCID. Mostly these, I would say. Of course.
Yeah. Federica, I think what you say is really important. And this use of PIDs, which is a big and complicated field, as you know, too. The question is not just to have the PIDs or to have the metadata. The question is to integrate that into a system where we can do the research assessment. I think
Yes.
that's the huge challenge there, I think. Yeah.
Yes. And also,
Yes, please.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Francis.
I finished. Sorry. Yeah.
And also be sure that this is one of the things that I'm trying to approach in Universe as well. Be sure that we do have ontologies and vocabularies that are fit for what we want to do. We want to rely on ontologies and vocabularies in order not to use something that is standardized and that can be interoperable. But what we are struggling with also is finding ontologies and vocabularies that are already completely fit for what we want to do. They might need some integration, some of them, or we might consider need some other options, but of course, possibly the first approach would be integrating when it's missing into an existing control vocabulary ontology and not creating something new, I would say. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Federica. I think that's something
Oh,
we
sorry.
need to think more about is the
Nilda wants to.
ontologies and vocabularies. Nielsa,
Yeah,
did you want to
I'd
say?
like to.
Yeah, she was going to say something. So yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. I'd like to come back to the question about the value of science in education before you finish this discussion about a shark, because I think that the idea of having a literacy in science that we needed at the past to understand science itself was changing a little bit due to these metadata. So we need to develop new skills to understand this new moment. By now, we have the perspective of need much more skills. As Francis said, we have AI as a part of our life, our society, our culture. So I try my best to understand all these things that you are talking here, and all the ecosystem and the sustainability, all the things that are new for me. But what I can see in my students at the university is that they still don't know how to do that. The university still don't realize that we need to invest in develop or stimulate development of skills on the new society. So for me, Francis, it's a real challenge because people, I think we intrinsically are changing our value related to us, to science and society, as you said. But I still think, how can we change this perspective? Because you see young people having a short activities very fast, changing all the time, and you cannot have a full, what should I say, a career that you prepare yourself for years in PhD, and then produce a lot of science, pure science, and then finish your career, leaving at least some people to continue your work. Oh, so sorry for trying to put all the things together, but by now I almost start to understand this a credit, because this new environment, since they I still I'm still trying to understand, but I'm pretty sure that several people even know they exist. So how to make people that see that this environment have value. So thank you so much for all the information, and that's the last statement about information, because at the past we, I myself or my generation, understand the development or the a knowledge as one thing that you appropriate after a process, after using skills. By now, people just take the information and think that they know all the things. That's not education for me. But anyway, it's another point. I have a lot of points to discuss at the education, because I'm very, very deeply involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Neela. I think what you said about process is really important here too. So it's not just outcomes, but it's the process. I think it goes something to what Allison says as well. But also, Neela, I wanted to ask you, could we connect what you said about literacy to what Federica said about ontologies and vocabularies? Would that not help with the literacy?
Start helping literacy, because literacy means you understand, you introduced in your own the process. You know that in science you need to have a question, you need to have the appropriate methods, you need to have the best statistics methods also. You need to read a lot to see what people have have found about this special question. At the end, you would have your conclusion based on your first question. So it's a process. It's a kind of thinking about life in this way. Not all people have literacy in science, you know. I have some students that still have not. If you based your life on this structure, you would have more methods to do almost whatever you want, or you. No, I don't know. That's my feeling, because in my department there were several people working on methodology in education, and they have this term of a science literacy. If you have not contact to this structure, you would not to understand, value, and even to introducing in your life. That's my idea.
I can say in all my discussions I've had, and this my shortcoming, but I've never heard this on research assessment. I've never heard this discussion about process and method, and it seems so fundamental.
And just last. I have an indigenous student that could not understand when I was talking about a replication, for example. He had no skills to understand how could people achieve that a result. And when I was teaching, I was putting all the experiments to guarantee people understand and to show the scientific methods. But he could never, ever. It was kind of a 6 years old people. I had at that time a son of my sister, can't remember, cousin, that was 7 years old, and I was stimulating him to this approach, and he was faster than this guy. It's what's amazing, because the culture of that tribal have no idea about a size. It's a personal case. I had never talked more about this because it's a limitation. I could feel that person have in relation to understand how science function.
Thank you, Nielsen. I just want to ask Aline or Katerina or Alyssa or Lawrence or Francois, not to, I've been saying too much. Otherwise, I think Federica and Chris have to help us go forward. Francois, you've put on your, oh, you've unmuted even. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yes, I think that, you have a list of possible things to do. And if I think about what SHARC did very well in his previous incarnation, and I understand you want a new incarnation, I think that the idea of a survey is certainly a good thing, because the landscape has evolved a lot since SHARC did the first survey. And so, and there is also knowledge of how it was done and how it was examined to get the conclusions. So it may be one, and I know it's a huge work, so it's not to say that it will be easy, but I think it would be useful, because as you said, the survey had a real value, but things have evolved, and I think that updating it could be a good thing. And again, you have the knowledge of how to do it, and the knowledge of the group has the knowledge of what the situation was when the survey was done, and is able to measure the evolutions, doing a new survey, I would say.
Francois, thank you for saying that. I want to ask you, I want to push you on this a bit. There's two things I have with it with regard to the survey. One is within the International Science Council, the steering committee group that we have, we had a discussion about landscaping this research assessment thing. But people said that there's been so many landscapings already done. But I don't know of a good one, actually. But that's my limited knowledge. So that's a question I have right there. The only other thing with and this is a personal thing with surveys, is they are so painful. So painful. Especially getting the ethics review and all of this stuff that and people don't like to fill them out and all. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, because I think survey is a really good methodology. Go back to what Nielsen said. I think it's a really good methodology. And I think it's a good scientific basis to build on. And what SHARC did originally was fantastic that way. But so I ask you again, maybe Francois or other people here, is there a real need for it? And if there's a real need, then maybe we have to go through the painful process. Yeah.
I just put there that the Laurence is pretty quiet on here, but I'll speak to the fact that looking back, the the amount of time we spent was not trivial. It was a great deal of time, like put into, and I think it also, when you look at how much time we had to commit, um, it ebbed and flowed sometimes, but what we had in Shark was we had an early career researcher, and then we had, another researcher that had more time on their hands, more, two early career researchers that really had a good deal of time, but not to say that Laurence had, spent a great deal of time wrangling us, like, and so I mean, it was, Laurence and Anne were the ones that put time into the IRB process too, and so I just, looking back at it now, I could just see the hours pile up, like, and over years. So
Yeah.
like when you say a survey, it is substantial, like just saying that. So there might
Could
be
I
other
just,
ways.
sorry, Federica, could I just mention something just to be a little more hopeful? Number one, in the repeat survey, you might be able to rely on the IRB for the first one a bit, so that might speed things up. The other thing is not to ask every question, to ask some questions you want some indication of movement in. So that can help too. Anyway, that's all. Thank you very much, Frederica.
Oh no, I think I still was unmuted from before, but yeah, what I was considering is maybe we should assess what we want to obtain from a new survey. I mean, which are the changes that we want to identify. The landscape evolved a lot. The ecosystem around the reward, the credit, recognition has expanded a lot in the last couple of years. Also, a lot of initiatives that are going on at the same time. But maybe we should understand what do we want to get from a new survey, which is of course something that we could think of doing, but takes time, and maybe assessing which are the priorities, what we think that is most relevant to get out of it.
I actually thought that Allison was putting up her hand when Christopher was speaking because she wanted to volunteer to do the survey. Um, but
I'm
Federica,
not too worried about that. I enjoy them.
I was gonna, by the way, before I was just gonna say there might be other, more lightweight options to consider too, like besides survey. So more community based,
Yeah,
approaches
but
and
you can't necessarily think about your ability to report on them, Chris. So just a bit of discussion to work out how much you can report on what you say and in what audience you want to report it. So if you're just reporting as a, experiential learning exercise, it's not too bad. But if you want to publish, yep. But you talk to Laurence, see what the IRB or the ethics approval was like, and maybe there's a pathway to ask 3 or 4 questions.
Yeah, well, the the approval, the ethical approval we had actually was for France. So it was, I'm not sure, but we need to talk about that. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's an international survey, probably it will need to other approvals as well. So might not be as simple as that, but
Usually, if you are lucky and you do snowballing, you may find there are enough partnerships agreements between research organisations, for example, the EU's Research Ethics Committee, that other committees will accept that.
Yeah.
If you go to some American universities, they might go, yeah, I don't like that, just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
Were you recording that?
That's recorded, yeah.
But still, I
But I'm
agree.
not
I fully
offended.
agree.
I'm American and I'm not offended by that. So
Yeah, I fully agree with Francis. Actually, it we it, it can be very time consuming to do a survey. I'm not too sure if there is enough people to do that in the SHARC group at the moment. So it really needs to be useful. So probably what Federica was saying is the first step to really identify uh, what is really needed, uh, what the objective is. So I don't know. I haven't been in all your discussions, so
we haven't
I
had
don't
too
know.
many.
But
So, but no, I mean we're hoping to gather some feedback here to take away. And we've gotten some, so it's good and we'll take that away to sort of frame the next the next steps here. But
Chris, if I
I
could say,
we're at time, by the way. We're almost at time. So
yeah,
like
I just wanted to say, I think what Lawrence said and Federica and also Allison and Francoise as well, it really depends upon what we want to achieve, which goes back to what Niels has said in a very elegant way. It's about the research process. So, what is the goals that we want to achieve, and what is the pathway? What is the method to get us there? And if a survey is the right instrument to get us to some specific outcomes, then we should do that probably. As painful and complicated as it is. But I think that's what we need to discuss in the group. But just one other thing I'd like not to lose from this discussion, because it was a light for me anyway. In research assessment, we focus so much on outcomes, on outputs. And I really want to thank Nielsa because she's made the point really clear. If we only focus on outputs, we will lose science and we will lose education, I think. We have to somehow understand the whole process that leads to whatever those outputs are, what leads to what is giving credit and rewards as well. I'm going to have to reflect on this, but I think it's a critical contribution from me. It's what I learned this week.
well, yeah, I'm we're we're at time here and I think there's been a lot to think about on this call and I um I just wanted to actually say one important thing, which is can we capture the chat? So I think Alyssa um, might be able to help us there. I was trying to copy the whole thing, but uh, if we can try to copy that before we end the session, that
I'm
would be
doing.
great because there's a lot of information there, I think, that would be helpful. So I don't know if Alyssa, she's
Yeah, Christopher, I'm just here. Is it the chat that you'd like?
yeah, the chat, yeah.
Yes, I will add it tonight to the collaboration notes, so you'll
Okay,
have access to
good.
it for sure.
That'll be great, yeah.
Yeah.
Because then the notes just fell off at a certain point. Sorry, I had a little one with me, so but I want to thank you, and I don't know Federica if you wanted to say thanks and all.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chris. I think we had a very inspiring and useful discussion also to lead the next steps in Shark, and it was very nice to see people who started the group here, and that provided a lot of perspective on what it was when it started, how we can drive change now, and which could be the next directions. I think that one. Um, first step before even thinking about the outcomes is probably as chairs going through the notes that we had tonight, seeing what emerges and the direction we want to take, and have a first meeting together with the group. So restarting probably maybe monthly, or let's see, maybe less frequent SHARC RDA meetings. It depends on what is needed, so that we have the space to discuss and build on what we started approaching tonight with this session. So yes, I don't know, Chris, if you think that it's we can think of a SHARC RDA group meeting again, so we have more people involved, and we can definitely build on what we discussed tonight. So of course, survey could be an option. We just have to see probably what are the objectives we want to achieve, and yes, so this could be one first step.